off with a bit of a macro perspective here. On the political front, we've seen some stability come to the fore. What's your view on what we've seen emerge here, and what impact do you see last week's agreements having on the markets moving forward? Because it did present somewhat of an obstacle with the nervousness it triggered.
I think, you know, the political risk is the one that participants are very wary of and a little bit nervous of. And I think it's, you know, if we get a clean surgical incision, it's worth quite a few hundred points on the equity indices. I think last week, if you saw, there was a very positive reaction. We continued to head higher. And I think quite a few participants actually saw that Ocampo had a roadmap. And I think, you know, there is a degree of optimism that maybe we can navigate our way through these political waters.
Let's get into some of the companies that are seeing movement. I mean, Safaricom, we've seen trade above 4 shillings. It's a 6-month closing high. It's breaking out on the charts. And then we saw it fall back Friday, back above 4 shillings again. Run us through the movement you're expecting to see there moving forward, given that the market has now had enough time to actually digest the numbers it released.
You're quite correct. You know, the market here does tend to respond counterintuitively, and I would say that 2-day weakness was actually an incorrect response. I think those results were extremely muscular. You saw new strong growth curves, and especially in data, which was up 94% from the previous equivalent 6 months. So it was a real off-the-charts increase. And we've been in a very, very strong uptrend since we based out at 255. We're now at 4. We've been Safaricom has been outperforming the broader market, and I think we're headed back towards 5. How quickly that happens, I'm not sure, but demand is a multiple of supply, and I think the fundamentals are now confirming the story, and investors will continue, I think, to push the price higher.
Let's make a distinction between investors here, because I mean, foreign investors on Friday moving in, mopping up shares at 4 shillings, but it's local investors that aren't seeming to be climbing in as aggressively. Does that come as a surprise to you, where we've just seen the first tranche of their bond issue being overly subscribed?
No, I think what we've got is, you know, the Safaricom was an outsized IPO. There was massive indigestion. Once the price went below 5, a lot of the local investors were sidelined. And I think, as I said before, the trigger for the local investor base to come back into the market is once we get closer to 5, which I don't think will take that long. Plus, as you said quite correctly, you know, we've seen a lot of local investor interest in the bond market. And today, I think Kenyan is being traded for the first time. It was oversubscribed by a massive amount. So I think what you've got is the equity asset class is rather a sort of orphan child for the local investors. But you know what? When you are an orphan child, there's only one place to go, and that's a better place. So I think we'll gradually see investors starting to tiptoe in. And I think that's a trend we got to keep an eye out for. But at the moment, they're all sidelined pretty much.
Let's just look at a news headline that could possibly affect Safaricom moving forward. I mean, news recently was the company has taken issue with the proposal to the Communication Commission to reduce licensing fees of all 3G technology as a way of facilitating more service by other service providers. How's that story developing? Because it's certainly one that will affect their performance moving forward in terms of new competition coming in at a bargain.
Yes, no, I think your point is well made, and I expect them to object quite strongly to that, because that is not a level playing field, as it were, although the regulator's probably looking at it on a wider scope and saying the more players we have, the merrier it will be. But I think they've got a point, and I think you're quite right to raise that flag. But they have stolen an enormous march in the internet space. They started offering an all-you-can-eat internet offer, 24-hour offer, at about $2.50. That was their first serious tilt at the mass market. And you know, they are showing people a clean pair of heels in this regard at the moment.